Two things at the top of the episode. Number one, welcome back to stunning Greer, South Carolina, and the BMW Performance Center East. And number two, how many times do you and I get to go on a track with the roof down? That is correct, not many, so let's take advantage of the opportunity. About damn time we have this engine in this package. So with that, let's put the hammer down, come around some of the technical turns here, and wow, this does make a difference with this kind of pushing power. Because remember, rear-wheel drive, no X-drive here. There is a noticeable difference, like more noticeable than you think. But I would argue it's not like the M8 competition that we drove, where I think that's too much power for that chassis. This is kind of the Goldilocks. It's just right, to the point where I would argue the Canadians have it right in this one. They only offer the Z4 as an M40i, not as an S30. So in this case, I'd say don't blame Canada. Let's circle back to steering in the S30. We found it was unusually good. It was one of these situations similar to a Morgan, not exactly like a Morgan, where you don't so much steer, you point a Z4, at least this generation of Z4. And here it is very much the same. The additional power does make it feel a bit sharper, but overall the goodness that we experienced in the S30 is retained here. Me personally, I'd like to have a little bit more weight to this steering. There's a feel to it, but there just isn't enough weight. So a very interesting PS to that segment. After I got off the track, I shared my driving impressions with Matt. He's the chief instructor at the BMW Performance Center East. And let's just say he knows a thing or two about both BMWs and car control. So he shed some additional light onto the steering. It turns out it's not just the steering that we were experiencing there. The car we're driving is fitted with the larger 19-inch wheels, and usually that's a problem on a track. But Matt was saying that it's 19 inches at all four corners, but the tire sizes staggered from front to rear. So having the larger tires in the back is helping the directional stability and directional control as you're pushing harder through those corners. So I've said in other episodes that this track is blessed with a number of technical bits, like what we're about to experience here. And this clearly the right tool for the job, even with no roof. It's amazing to me, the driving dynamics. Okay, I didn't do that one right, but I'll clean it up over here, hit the apex and come out to the straight. And even if you disturb the plane of motion like I did back there is forgiveness in the driving dynamics here. I would argue that the additional power does not confuse or make the car more difficult to handle like it does in the M8 competition. Now please don't tell the folks at BMW I did turn off the DSC. Not completely, I want to be invited back. I'm in the middle mode right now, so it allows you to steer the car with your right foot, which I can't say the same in larger BMWs on this track. Here, it's just so much fun to drive. Like, that's the only way to describe it. It is a pisser on a track. Now it turns out that there's a visual trick going on here that you would not know about unless A, you have seen this thing in person and really studied it, or B, you know the dimensions. Now, the BMW marketing folks will go on and on and on about there's 50% more storage capacity in the trunk, and this is like the second coming of Christ. You and I are not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on the dimensions. And it's not just the length, which is 3.3 inches longer, or the width, which is 2.9 inches wider, or the height, that's only a half an inch more. And then the wheelbase, actually, it shrinks by an inch. It's the track, both front and rear. Now, I know some of you think this thing is off-putting in the way it looks. Whether you like it or not, it's the front track, which is 3.86 inches wider, and 2.45 in the rear wider. That's what makes it look different. That's why it has the design it does. And I would argue it's probably helping us on the track today, making it a more stable vehicle. But ultimately, it gives this, it's a design unlike any other, but it's not the sheet metal, it's the dimensions. A little bit behind the scenes here, I am shooting this late in the afternoon, which means a lot of other people have had a chance to drive this thing, really beat the snot out of it on the track, which would tell you that the brakes, they're probably gone for the day. And surprisingly, not the case. Like that S30 we drove in Palm Springs, that was a fresh set of pads. I was the first one to drive that thing on the track. This, I'm the last person to drive it on the track, and I am genuinely surprised, not just by that beautiful backfire, but how responsive the brakes are after punishing it throughout the entire day. And I've watched it, there's only one of these here today. They didn't take it off the line and change the pads. For more than a couple of years now, you and I have been driving a lot of these middle-of-the-road sort of performance cars from the likes of Mercedes and BMW. And while they're not the most basic serial production German cars out there, they're not the very special full-fat AMGs and M GmbHs. What they are is the serial production car, usually with more power, and then some performance bits sprinkled on top of it. This is no exception, but there is something a bit different about the M package that is on this thing. Yeah, it's got the adjustable dampers like other derivations of M Sport cars in the BMW lineup, and yes, the M Sport brakes. But there is a trick they ripped off from Porsche, in that the adjustable dampers, even in the most like basic setting, the comfort setting, the ride height is 10 mils lower than the S30 version of the Z4. And then there's a differential. Now, let's be honest here. It's not the same differential that we experienced in the SL63 AMG, which is like your grandfather's mechanical diff that he had in his like home-built hot rod back in the 50s. No, it's an E-diff, and it uses an electronic motor, but it can still send more torque or vary the torque from side to side depending on where you're cornering. Let's see when I put the car aside for a bit and have a little bit of fun. I don't know if you can see him up there. That's Matt. He runs the track here. Not only can that guy shoot, man, he can drive. He's also super cool. I've gotten to know him over the past 3 events. BMW have done this over the past 2 years. So he's given me a little leeway to play on the track here and give it to me with a little bit of time to myself. And notice, you can see he doesn't cone off the track to slow people down. So if you were a complete jackass, you could go off there, or you can show some responsibility, and then you get the track like this. And here, hit the apex, go on the back straight, which is parallel to a test track that the engineers use that mimics the Autobahn in Germany. You can get up to 170 miles an hour in an M8 competition, or you could be on this technical part of the track and have a lot of fun. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game in mind, the options game, with today's contestant, the 2020 BMW Z4 S-Drive M40i. Whew. A lot of letters and numbers to say the full-fat version of the Z4 we drove about a year ago, and wow, does the base price reflect at $63,700. To that we add frozen gray metallic Santa Maria Madre de Dios. You must see this in person. It is, the only word you could use is wunderbar, and it better be for $3,600. Put another way, it's about 5% of the base price of the car. Then this one has the Magna Red Vermasca leather. That's included. But Kumo, of course, he went online, booked his version that he wants. He doesn't like the red interior, doesn't go well with his coat. He prefers the cognac, which is an additional $1,700. Then we add a driver's assistance package, lane keep assist, blind spot warning, that kind of stuff. That is $500. Then we add a premium package. That's the stuff that makes it a bit fancier, like the remote key, the fancier lights, things like that. That's $1,400. Then the executive package, that adds the Wi-Fi hotspot, the Harman Kardon, which I would argue is very important in a vehicle like this. Shouldn't be optional, but $2,500. Then we add a very important option, especially considering the color of this vehicle, the 19-inch Orbit gray wheels, $600, quite a bargain. Then there's the destination charge, $995, for a total suggested retail price, and I cannot believe I'm reading this, $73,295. Am I the only one that's somewhat knocked on his ass about that? Perhaps we've had too much Supra on the brain, because that's about a $50,000 car, and we drove the 4-cylinder, which is also about a $50,000 car. I don't know about you guys, but that seems like a lot of money to me, because, you know, these days, it's all C8. And 75, almost 75 grand, one can get a really nice C8. You know what? Comments below. What would you do? A Z4 for almost 75 grand. It's nice, it's good, don't get me wrong, but it's almost 75 grand, or a C8, or something else. Let me know in the comments below.